Welcome to the Dumpster Fire Project, a podcast that memorializes the fantastic and oftentimes catastrophic entrepreneurial journey of two unremarkable middle-aged men. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 6. Today's episode, we were lucky enough to talk to a really dynamic guest. Sincerely, we're really grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with Steve Sauceda. Steve Sauceda is a dynamic leader and engaging communicator who has a passion for sharing a message of hope, grace, and second chances to crowds of all sizes and backgrounds. Steve has developed a modern and appealing approach to communicating over his 25 years of standing on stage. If you're starting a side hustle, looking for advice or inspiration, or you just want to hear a really good story, I think you're really going to like this one. Take it away, Murray.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dumpster Fire Project. I'm Murray, and this is what we're calling our third special episode. We're still at home riding out the pandemic, and we're bringing on a lot of valuable guests. Today, we have another one with us, so I'll hand it over to Eric and have him introduce.
All right. Thanks, Murray. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this episode. I met Steve, our guest, fairly recently, actually. He did a presentation where I work and immediately realized that he was an amazing speaker, and we had a conversation, shortly after that, and it seemed like our passions were kind of aligned, and he had a really cool story. So I thought he'd be a perfect guest for this. So can't thank you enough for coming on with us. Steve Sauceda, how are you?
Hey, guys. What's up? How you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Good.
Yeah, all things considered, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No kidding. We were just talking about this before we got on. I think everybody here is relegated to working at home now, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's I think crazy is one way that people have been describing the time. Crazy, weird, unsettling, all the adjectives.
Yeah, for sure. So just to maybe give our wide listener base that we're shooting for some background information on you, Steve, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And so a little bit about me. I've grown up in southeastern New Mexico, kind of a small town in the state. We're about 70,000 in the county and where I live, and kind of have a dual role. So basically how this works is for about 13 years now, a little over 13 years, I have worked for New Mexico Junior College in Hobbs, New Mexico, in our training and outreach division, and get to serve as the director of workforce training. And that is a fancy way of saying that I get to oversee our non-credit short-term workforce division that comes out of the college. And we serve about a 120-mile radius. That this isn't necessarily anything that's going towards a college degree or for college credit, but for short-term workforce training where people are looking to brush up on their skill set, or perhaps they're interested in joining another industry altogether. And we try to work with them to get the skill set that they need. On top of that, I'm also the owner, and as Eric had mentioned, of Steve Sauceda Communications, where I get to travel all over the country and speak for different companies and industries. Some have called it a motivational or inspirational speaker, and the title and moniker doesn't really matter all that much. And so I've been doing that for about 2 years now professionally, but have actually been speaking since I was 12 years old in terms of standing on a stage and standing in front of crowds. And also I have my own podcast that is now 4 years in existence called Untucked with Steve Sauceda. And it's heard on podcasts, and it's heard on Spotify, and it's heard regionally on local radio as well. And since July of 2018, I was invited to write a column for the newspaper in the city in which I live. So I put out a column the first and third Sunday of the month, and a new radio show and podcast the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, while also keeping a full-time job. And in 2019, I spoke 46 times in 8 different cities to 14 different industries.
That is awesome. Well, I don't want to make you blush here, Steve, but I can tell you when you came in and spoke at the city, it wasn't a motivational speech. It was a training type of thing, but I was inspired by what you did, especially after we talked afterwards, because I had kind of developed a passion, kind of almost accidentally, over the past few years. When I used to be a prosecutor, they used to make me go do trainings for law enforcement and sometimes other prosecutors. And then when I left the DA's office, I found that I really missed that. And when I started getting back into it, I kind of fell in love with it. So when I saw you doing it and saw your success, it really got me motivated to get my LLC going. And I think it was shortly after you were there, I actually got all the paperwork filed and started to book a couple of gigs, which right now are on hold due to the current situation. But yeah, I just wanted you to know that it was kind of cool. And it's good to hear the success that you have and all the things that you're doing. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And it always means the world to me when someone says that they get inspired by something that you're doing, because, there's guys, and there's always so many people who have the dream, but oftentimes it just stays the dream. And there's so many reasons why so many people don't pursue it. I can tell you for me that, I had been speaking for a while and then kind of took a break. Life circumstances presented themselves and I wasn't speaking as much. But I got to say that there's a couple of things that really motivated me to actually take the leap and jump in with both feet or head first, whichever analogy you prefer. And that is this. The first time, I would say, here we are in 2020. I would probably say around 2018, late 2018, because prior to that, I had really gone through some stuff. And, I love what you guys call your podcast, where it's just kind of raw, it's vulnerable and transparent. So that's what I'm going to be with you. And this kind of is the story that leads to how I developed, as you all have put, the side hustle. That in 2016, it was the best professional year that I had ever had. I had been offered the radio show, had gotten a promotion, and felt so grateful that there's a publication called Permian Basin Oil and Gas Magazine that circulates all over Texas and the Southwest. And I just lucked out, man. They chose me to be on the cover of their magazine, and they did a cover story. They covered the work that we had done through the college and through our division. And just things were going great, had won some really great awards, and life was good. And then in 2017, it's like my world turned upside down. And probably for the next 18 months, I shied away from any kind of public events and was really battling through depression and really anxiety, and kind of wondered if I would ever get back. Truly, if I should, if I would, or if I could, but, really started working through those things in terms of getting with a counselor and really starting to develop some close friends, because as you're kind of in the eye of the public, you're standing on stages where, if we're not careful, sometimes you tend to develop a persona, and you live as a persona instead of a person. In essence, that you're kind of giving people the impression that you don't struggle with anything because you're such in the public light that you want to make sure that you're not showing weakness, which that was unfortunately a byproduct of the environment where I grew up, places where I attended that kind of said, man, you can't show weakness, man. You can show weakness privately, but not out there, because you got to be strong. And people need a leader who they can follow. And I can say now on the back end of that, I feel that unfortunately I followed that thought process for way too long. And so during kind of the breakdown period of 2017 and midway through 18, I felt like was able to start rebuilding in a way that, hey, look, if I ever get an opportunity to start speaking again, I want to make sure that I'm transparent and that I'm vulnerable and that I'm not special or extremely gifted. I just keep getting back up. And I think that, those close to me encourage me, but even family would say, are you sure you want to do this? I don't want people to start looking at you differently or treating you differently. And my whole thing was, I hope they do, and I hope they will. And not really knowing what kind of doors would open after that. And I feel like using social media, and I believe that social media is an incredible tool for anyone who's doing what you guys are doing, is a great tool, but it's willing to understand that you got to find a balance between being able to put yourself out there and kind of being too haughty or arrogant as well. And I started to see doors open in terms of speaking engagements. And my background, I grew up in a faith-based environment, so a lot of mine was in a faith-based arena. And this takes me back full circle to the two things that really started catapulting me to launching Steve Sauceda communications. And I remember at the end of 2018, I kept saying to my friends, and I'm like, man, the doors aren't opening. No one is calling me. Like, what is going on? Because I had put it in my head that whatever gift or talent that I have within me, I was always felt and led to believe that you just need to be able to use it in a faith-based arena. And those doors weren't opening. And one day I heard a podcast from a gentleman that I follow. His name is Stephen Furtick. He's based out of North Carolina. And he made this statement. I was getting ready for work one day. He said, many of you have a dream. And he said, and you keep waiting for it to happen. And you were like, why isn't this happening? And why isn't that happening? And I turned the volume up. I'm like, this dude is talking to me. And he made this statement. He said, if you would do what you know, you would know what to do. And I played it again. If you would do what you know, you would know what to do. So I started going, wait a minute. I've been a business professional for 15 years. I've had some really good success with this. I went back to school and I got an MBA. Steve, you have so many networks and opportunities that you're not using. You know that, so do that. And it was like an epiphany. And then there's an influencer and a speaker that I follow on Instagram. His name is Mike Foster. I love the content that he puts out. He reposted and reshared on his Instagram a quote that said, ask for support, not permission. And that was just revolutionary to me, guys, because I felt for the longest time that I was like, I kept asking people, do you think this is okay? I mean, do you think I should do this? And then I started adopting a mindset that says, I don't need a permission slip to pursue the God-given dream that was inside of me. And then I just went for it. I started reaching out to people. I started using LinkedIn and Instagram and then Facebook and saying, hey, my name is Steve Sauceda. This is what I do, and this is kind of what I speak on. If you're ever interested, let me know. And then as time went on, I developed more capital. I created my website of stevesauceda.com that would kind of be the hub for everything that I do. Like all my columns are there, all my podcasts are there, an about section is there, as well as a contact form. You know, registered the domain name, got some email stuff going, worked with a professional photographer to get some headshots and action shots. And then so basically I just went and said, why not me? Why not me?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I got a bunch of questions. I'm sure Murray does too, but why this is on the top of my head. How did you feel about those action shots? That's something that I thought about, and I had something coming up. It was supposed to be next week, actually. Of course, it got postponed, and I considered the same thing. I considered hiring a professional photographer to come in, but then, you get some negative thoughts, like what will the people there think if they see somebody taking a picture of me, or, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I believe in it because my opinion, guys, is if it has my name attached to it, I want it to represent excellence. I really do. And I think that there's nothing wrong with starting where you are if it's a cell phone and someone doing that. But I think that if you have an opportunity to invest in one, professional headshots, a professional website, and then I would say if you're looking to expand, actually inviting and paying a professional photographer and or videographer to go with you while you are speaking and not being afraid to express, these are kind of the shots that I'm looking for. These are the angles that I'm interested in, because I really started to adopt that you have not because you ask not. And true, I do believe for me and for all of us, we constantly have to get out of our mind of how is this going to look to them? What's this going to feel like? And truthfully, the way that I've taken to it is, you know what? They're not the ones who pay my bills, and they're not the ones with this dream in their heart. So if they don't like it, that's okay.
Nice. Murray, what do you got?
Yeah, so many good things there. I'm going to try and narrow this down, but I find it interesting that we have a very similar background in the sense that you said you had been, on stages since the age of 12. Eric and I have been in bands our whole lives, performing on stages. So I think there's a connection there, but I also think that we come from the same background where we grew up on the east side of Michigan over in Flint, where there's also that don't be vulnerable, rub some dirt on it. There's just something to that making this leap sometimes does feel it gets you almost even more out of your comfort zone because you grew up in that in so many years. So I guess one of my questions is when you were working through that, did you join a masterminds group? Were you doing it digitally and just taking in as much, podcasts or YouTube videos every day? What kind of helped you get into a positive, feeling confident mindset?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question, Murray. Honestly, for me, I started seeing a counselor in February of 2017, and I still see him. Now, while I still don't deal with depression, I think that for anyone who's listening would know that if you've ever dealt with it before, it never truly goes away, that there's always triggers and things that could almost want to suck you back in. But I think for me, counseling has helped. And for me also, I would say that when you are in the public light, much like you gentlemen, as you've been playing in bands and on stage, there is a podcast that my best friend sent to me in January of 2018. And it was, it's about a 15-minute podcast, a message called Confidants, Constituents, and Comrades. And what it really delved into for a short amount of time just revolutionized my thinking that the confidants are those people that you can count on one hand in your lifetime. How I put it are your ride or dies, that whether you're in the crack house or the outhouse or the penthouse, they're there for you. They're not so much attached to you for what you can do. They're attached to you because of who you are. And for me, these are the people for the first time in my life who looked me dead in my eye and said, I don't care if you never stand on another stage. I don't care if you're in an arena talking full of people, or if your radio show blows up, or you write a column that is reprinted by the New York Times. We care about you. That's great that you love it, but we care about you. And then constituents, in the best way I can paint this word picture, that a constituent is kind of like scaffolding in a building. When a building is going up, the scaffolding is pressed up so hard up against it that it is necessary for the construction of the building. But when the building is done, the scaffolding goes away. And oftentimes people in public places confuse a confidant with a constituent, that we come to recognize that sometimes people are only attached to us for what we can do and what we can offer. But when that goes away, so do they. But for me, I had to learn that that's okay, that sometimes people are attached to me because they want to come hear me speak, they want to hear a podcast, they want to read something that I've done, and that's okay. So long as I understand that they are not my friend, that these are not people going to call and check on me during like a COVID-19 crisis, they're just wondering when the next column is coming out. But when I started doing that and digitally, I listened to a lot of Furtick and I started reading a lot of books. I would say probably during the course of that really mental health struggle, I think I read 22 books.
Wow. That is a lot. I want to follow up on something. You mentioned going through depression. So I've never, we're being real here, so might as well say it. I've never talked to a counselor, but a big reason why I started to kind of decided to take the jump and get the side business started is because I spent almost 10 years as a prosecutor where, first 4 or 5 years, I absolutely loved what I did. I thought it was the best job in the world. But I didn't pay attention to a lot of advice I got from professors in law school about burnout and stuff like that. So I didn't take vacations. I was always on call. I was constantly thinking about moving up the ladder. And finally, I did. I got to the kind of top of my career point in about 2017 as a prosecutor. And I realized quickly that I was just completely burnt out. And I started getting angry all the time. And just like I'd see something come on TV about the judicial system, and all I had was negative comments, and I don't know why they're even doing a trial. They're just going to acquit him anyway, be back on the streets tomorrow. I found out recently at a conference I was at, there was a psychiatrist speaking, and I had never known this, but he said part of depression can actually be, especially with males, is like a lot of anger and stuff like that. And I had no idea, and I was like, wow, I probably was going through a lot of that, and I had no idea.
And I would say, guys, is that part of what I do is, I'm not so much interested in speaking to 15,000, although if that opportunity came, I'm going to take it. I think the way that I've been putting it is the guy who emerged from the ashes in mid 2018 is I want to make an impact. And Eric, to your point, the presentation that Eric's talking about, it's hard to believe it's almost been a year since I did that. I did it mid-April of 2019, and let's just be honest, March of 2020 has felt like 7 years just in and of itself.
For sure.
The generations presentation that I've developed, and I'm so happy to say that I've spoken on it in 20 different industries now as to date, because it's so relevant, and it talks about the varying generations in the workplace, where you've got your younger demographic versus your more life experience demographic, and what they are constantly doing is butting heads. They are constantly feeling like they're right, the other one's wrong, and vice versa. And Eric, you've seen it firsthand that the idea of the presentation is to be engaging, it's entertaining, it's humorous, but at the end, it also makes you walk away going, my God, I do this. And it's not so much just the other person, but turning the mirror inward and saying, okay, rather than ragging on my older counterpart or my younger one, what can I do different to better understand their reward system, their value system, and how they communicate and how they receive feedback as well?
Yeah, that's why I can still recall a lot of the stuff that you said, when you gave your presentation, because not only was it interesting and very well spoken, but there was a lot of takeaways from it as well. And since sometimes, you get someone that's entertaining, but you don't really take anything of value away from it. And that's when I realized, I was like, man, this guy's good speaker. Yeah. I still remember that. It's been a year. It's hard to believe.
It's been a year. And honestly, for me, I constantly get asked, how do you balance a director's job, owning your own business, doing a podcast, and writing a column? And what I would say to that is I have to be very intentional with my time. And to you gentlemen, and to anyone and everyone who will listen to this, if you want to have a side hustle, there's one word that I'm just guarantee you that will help you out in order to have success, and that's learning the word no. Learning how to say no to things that are not contributing to where you want to go. Because, we can all quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And that's fine. You guys have a great talent in what both of you are doing. But at the same time, I finally had to hang up my cape. And what that means is I cannot do everything all the time, and I cannot be all things to all people. And that is what was starting to lead to burnout. That is what was starting to lead to annoyance and short fuses, because we're taught, man, if you can help, it's your duty to help. But right. I understand that. But my take on that is I can help where I can help. So, like, for example, I am not handy at all. You put me inside Home Depot and Lowe's, I look like a kid who is lost without his parents. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. No one is going to ask me to help them with the home improvement project. It's not my forte. No one's going to ask me to come help them fix their car. I'm going to be like, does it have gas in it? Yeah. Did you check the battery cables? Yeah. I'm out. That's all I got for you. But where I can help is where I can help. And I would say to the listeners that learning how to say no is going to be one of the best tools in your pocket, because if you are stretched a million different ways, you've got no strength to pour into that dream. None.
That's a good point. I experienced that firsthand with what I did in my day job, for sure. I think, Murray, probably you to a certain extent as well, or where you're at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good thing is I actually learned that from my day job before I even got into this journey. So it was easy for me to get into it and balance a little bit more, but it was a very hard struggle just even on my day job. But once I got used to it, you're absolutely right, Steve. Like you can see very clearly that nope, there's no point in me even touching this. I'm going to waste everyone's time. I'm going to make it worse, whatever it is. So, and there's polite ways to say no. People hear the word no, like, no, you can have a conversation about it, help them understand, steer them in the right direction. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Balancing your time and saying no where it makes sense is going to be more beneficial to everyone.
Well, and go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say that's a tough one to learn. Murray's more disciplined than me. My mom used to call me in high school Good Time Eric because I didn't say no to anybody. And I'm still at 37 still trying to learn that lesson. It's tough. I mean, how do you do it?
It's very tough, and I feel for me it's just because I feel like maybe for the first time in my life about 2 years ago, I had a heading of where I wanted to go. Let me give you an example. So about 2.5 years ago, I was approached by the vice president of instruction at the college where I work and said, we need some help in our business department. I said, what do you mean? He said, we are looking for an individual who is highly motivated and intelligent and engaging and good with crowds and a business background who can help us with our intro to business class because our numbers are dwindling and we need to be able to wow them with the introductory class so that they continue on in the journey of a business major. And he looked straight at me and he goes, do you happen to know anybody? And I just kind of looked to the side. I was like, no, doesn't ring any bells. And so basically the college had approached me and said, we're asking you at the age of 35 to be a college professor because we need your help. And so I did it for 2 semesters, and I very humbly can say we had great success with it. And students, the very first semester, I had a wait list in my very first semester of students who wanted to get in, and then the same in the second semester. At the same time, I was also the chair of the board of the United Way where I live. I had been on the board for 5 years and was climbing the executive committee and chaired the United Way for 2 years. At the same time, towards the tail end of that, I was earning my MBA online and was volunteering like crazy at my church and a college professor. I was still doing the show, but the column hadn't come out until finally at the end of towards the end of 2018, I had to walk to that vice president's office and I said, I need you to know that at the end of this semester, I'm not coming back to teach. It's not because we haven't had success or that the feedback hasn't been great, but I've got a dream in my heart that I want to pursue. I told the United Way at the end of my run, I said, I'm resigning at the end of this. I love what you guys have done. I love what we've accomplished together, but I've given you 5 years. And anything that wasn't pushing me towards my dream, I started removing myself from. And I will tell you one thing that we deal with all the time, especially in this age of social media, is FOMO, the fear of missing out. Because we feel like if we say no, we're like, what are we missing out on? What are we missing out on? And don't think that I still don't feel that way from time to time, but I could not have spoken 46 times in 2019 if I was still doing all of those things. In essence, I had said to myself, United Way, I have built your dream. NMJC Business Department, I have helped build your dream. And all these other things I was involved in, it was good. And it helped get me to where I am. But finally, I had to say, when am I going to say no to you so I can say yes to me?
That's solid. And Murray, I know you're going to comment on what he said about FOMO, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't wait to jump in. So I struggle from that drastically. And it's been an uphill battle for me. And what I've learned is you have to figure out of everything that's going on, there is the day-to-day FOMO, like, oh, someone's here doing that. But it's, what projects are you going to go after? And this is how I learned to say no is I figure out what's important to me, at least for maybe that year. If it's a big enough project, what do I want to do? And I dedicate myself saying, okay, you're going to see this through. You got to get something done because FOMO can lead you down a path where you get 5% of a lot of things done and then you don't feel accomplished, and then you're just in this constant spiral and you just feel out of control, and it's not helping the FOMO at all. So for me, it was something where I'm just always going everywhere, but when I narrow it down and focus, say, okay, these are 5 passions I really have starting out this year. Which ones am I going to go after? And I'm going to see those through. And then maybe, if the next 2 to 5 year plan, I can go after something different. So I don't feel necessarily trapped either by knowing, okay, there's still other stuff going on. It's like, oh, you can still go do that. You just can't do it right now because you got to finish this out. So that's how I balance it. It's just a little bit of a personal story there, but I don't know if you had any other tricks there, Steve.
I would say that it truly is. I think much of our success depends on who we surround ourselves with as well. Because I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to criticism, but what I say is this: you have to consider the source when it comes to criticism. And this is how I take it. If you are not close enough to me to have my personal cell phone number, then I don't care. I know that sounds harsh because, we've got keyboard warriors in this day and age. How do I define a keyboard warrior? Someone with brave fingertips and a cowardly heart, meaning that they're willing to hide behind a keyboard of a laptop or their cell phone and talk all kinds of trash, but they're never willing to address it to you face to face. You got to delete it from your brain. I know it would hurt, but it's kind of one of those things of everyone has an opinion, but you always have to consider that who it's coming from. And one thing that I have learned, you will never be criticized by someone who's doing less than you. Never. I mean, you'll always be criticized by someone who's doing less than you, not more than you.
Yeah,
that's true. A good point.
For sure.
So I did want to touch on one other thing too, Steve. Sure. With all your speaking engagements, I don't know if you realize this, and maybe you do. I'm just going to throw it out there, but every time I learn something, I definitely want to give back. Mm-hmm. But when I give back and I teach it, it's just like that old saying that they say, if you teach it, it helps set in with you more. So I think we're getting more back as we're giving too. So it's almost a win-win for people like us to want to be able to not only learn and develop, but then go out and also pass it on and motivate. And that helps continue to fuel that flame.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Murray, because I think early on in my career, I always felt like I was stockpiling my little golden nuggets. And what I mean by that is there was such a fear that if I spoke it or if I posted it, someone else would take it and run with it. And it wasn't until later on in my life and in my career that I started to develop an attitude of, I don't care who gets credit for it. If it helps you, put you on the path you need to go, I can rejoice. Because I remember back at a point in my life, I was a youth pastor, and I remember I would prepare messages to try to impact the young people at the age that they were, to try to speak their language. I was watching some of the things that they were watching so that I could have a point of reference. And I remember I would say I was developing a 2-month series on the subject XYZ. And I'm pouring my heart into it, and I felt like they just weren't getting it. And then we take them to a week-long summer camp, and a guy came up and spoke for 30 minutes on something that I had been speaking on for 2 months. And they go back to the camp, they go back to the room, and they go back to the bus. They're like, oh, my God, that was the best message I've ever heard in my life. And I'm like, oh, my God. But I took that same mentality and applied it to my professional career and saying, I might be the guy that plants the seed. I might be the guy that waters the seed, but eventually if you get a harvest on whatever it is, whether you give me credit for it or not, and to your point, Murray, it's in essence paying it forward, but with knowledge and best practices and not caring so much about who gets the credit, but circling back to the original intent of just trying to make an impact wherever we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I got one for you, Steve. I know we're getting about close to, I think, to our half-hour time. We may even be over, but this will be my last question. Where do you see this COVID-19 stuff going with what would you say to someone like myself or someone that may have a speaking business or even any type of business that's affected by this, and what could they do with this downtime? And rather than getting depressed by it, I mean, what can they do to be proactive about thinking about getting ready to get hitting the ground running when it comes out, or maybe even finding some opportunities in the change in the market this causes?
Absolutely. Wonderful question. And it's something that I've actually been talking about with my circle and thinking while I've been at home as well. And I would say never discard the downtime, because people like the three of us rarely have it. People that we're trying to impact rarely have it. And I would say, look at this time, if you have an opportunity to work from home, as a blessing, because it can be a shift in perspective. Like, for example, I have not been able to go into the studio to record another show. So I have been doing an Instagram and Facebook Live in lieu of being in the studio at the exact same time that a new show would be released, because I don't want to lose contact with the audience. I'm still writing my column, and I would say that whatever subject it is that you are interested in being in or currently in, do your due diligence and do research. Polish up the presentations, work on those slides, put some stuff out on YouTube, and just really be willing to put yourself out there, because if people don't know what you're doing, then how do they know? I know that sounds so elementary, but it's so true. It's something that a mentor told me. He goes, Steve, you got to do it in a way that you put it out there, that you let people know that this is what you do. You just don't have to shove it down their throat. And I would just consider using social media to your advantage, encouraging people that with whatever your field is, whether it's law, whether it's engineering, put some facts out there, put some figures out there. And people are constantly looking for content, but just kind of be mindful of the crowd that you're trying to reach and whatever platform is best for that. But what I would say is, rather than just resorting to nonstop snacking and Netflix binging at all times, is to still get yourself up as if you were going to work and redeem the quiet time, because once we're back, guys, we know that quiet time will kind of go by the wayside. But I would say to redeem the time of researching, if you have an opportunity to work with a web designer and build yourself a website, and find a hub that people could find you, so that when the doors open back up, that you're not trying to prepare, you're already prepared. Because this is one of those times where I believe that this is where preparation and research really helps, so that when that opportunity comes, you're not saying, oh, I'm not ready. You're like, nope, COVID-19 actually helped me get ready, and let's do it.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Steve, where can we find your podcast, your website, all that stuff?
Absolutely. SteveSauceda.com. That is SteveSauceda.com. You can click on, just go SteveSauceda.com. All the columns are archived there. The podcast is there. The show is there. And if you have an Apple device, you can just go on podcast, type in Untucked with Steve, like an untucked shirt. Steve, why do you call it that? Because I haven't tucked my shirt in years. It doesn't matter what shirt it is. I just never tucked them in. And the column is all there as well. So if there was ever an opportunity, to come out, you can just click on contact. There's an About Me section is there. It's just SteveSauceda.com, SAUCEDA.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody check it out. Steve, as you can hear, has got a wealth of knowledge and a lot of good stuff there. So, and I've listened to your podcast a few times, and I've even heard you on the radio a few mornings going to work. So it's all good stuff. Murray, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you've been an absolute inspiration, and I think the listeners would agree that the flames here in the dumpster fire today have been a lot lower, because we've got an expert on who's doing what we're trying to get to, and just knowing you're out there doing it, it provides hope for us. Just seeing somebody who's already been, a couple more years down the road, and it's just been a delight having you on here. So with that, again, we thank you. Go check out all of Steve's items, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Steve. You. Take care.
Hang on, everybody. Don't turn us off just yet. Please check out Steve Sauceda's website at SteveSauceda.com. Subscribe to his podcast, Untucked with Steve Sauceda. You can find Murray at FullVolumeSolutions.com. You can find me at TacticalAttorney.com. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe. Everybody stay safe. We'll see you next time.